Well, good afternoon, good evening. Maybe for some of you it is the next day. Bienvenidos. You are here for Cultivating Voices live poetry. And if it's our second Sunday of the month, you are here for our new books showcase. I'm your host, Sandy Yannone, and I am so thrilled for our first new book showcase of our 2025 winter season. And this showcase is so special. They all are, of course. But I love this one in particular because it's our first of the year. It's also the first new book showcase as we're heading into our fifth season, which is just such an amazing, amazing thing to think about. And these writers today that you're going to be hearing, they're all from the same amazing press. It's truly one of my favorite presses in the entire country, MoonPath Press. We have the editor, who is also one of our new book showcase readers today, and all the readers are from MoonPath. And I have, because I've lived in the Pacific Northwest for many years, I actually have quite wonderful connections with each one of these tremendous, tremendous poets. So I am feeling a lot of the warm, fuzzy feels for this reading today. And I definitely am going to take it in as some beautiful, beautiful poetry, medicine. And don't we all need some of that these days? I want to personally just send out, you know, acknowledgement of we need so much healing energy all over the world. Um, and we know where the literal spots are, and then some we don't know. I particularly want to reach out to the folks in California today. It's been very, very difficult to be watching the images and knowing the loss, the different kinds of losses people are experiencing. There's loss of life, but a loss of property isn't as capitalistic as it always sounds. With that is hosts of memories and history and culture that goes along with those losses. And so I just want to, acknowledge that. And I want to acknowledge that there is, of course, there's a little bit of being on eggshells as we're heading to Inauguration Day here in the United States, which has ripple effects throughout the world, of course. All the more reason for us to gather whenever we can gather and use the strength of poetry to be in support of each other and of as Don Krieger writes about so, so well. One of the first poems he ever read to me was called Our Shared Humanity. So here we are today, once again, everyone. Thank you to all of you here in the Zoom room live with us. Thanks to those of you watching us live on Facebook and/or our YouTube streaming channel. And of course, a shout out to those of you who are watching us in the recordings. Well, Don Krieger and Kim Ports Parsons are instrumental to this program, supporting it. I want to give a shout out to them. And a reminder that today's program, as with every program, our chat here in Zoom is live. Please send the love and encouragement and acknowledgments to our readers and to the audience as you see fit, respectfully and gleefully. And also the links to our writers of today, all from MoonPath Press, will be populated live here as the readers are reading, as well as on our Cultivating Voices live poetry page tomorrow, if you're interested in purchasing any of the collections of our readers today. One final note before I move right to our first reader for today is to thank also, and she also happens to be in the Zoom room with us today. I want to thank Tina Berry for kicking us off with our Poets Focus last week on art. And oh my gosh, with her artist collaborator, Kristen Flynn, what a tremendous, tremendous way to open up our entire season. So thank you so much, Tina, Kristen, and those of you who read on the open mic. Well, let's turn to our readers for today. As I said, everyone here has their collections from the amazing MoonPath Press. And I don't know what I can say about Ansley Clark other than some of you happen to know that Ansley um, is the director of the Writing Center at the Evergreen State College, which was my former position. So we have a really shared connection through that and also through poetry. And I just adore you. As you know, I adore you as a human. I adore you as an amazing, amazing educator. I have so much respect for your poetry and how you are in the world. So you're actually the first New Book Showcase reader of the whole year inside this little beautiful container of the first New Book Showcase. I couldn't be happier because I'll never forget it. Well, Ansley Clark is a writer and teacher from the Pacific Northwest. She is the author of Bloodline, published, of course, by MoonPath Press in 2024, and the chapbook Geography from Dancing Girl Press in 2015. Her poems and essays have appeared in Poetry Northwest, Colorado Review, Bennington Review, and elsewhere. She received her Master of Fine Arts in Poetry from the University of Colorado Boulder in 2016, and she is currently, as I mentioned, the director of the Writing Center at the Evergreen State College in Washington and teaches poetry workshops with the amazing Hugo House in Seattle. Thank you, Ansley. I cannot wait to hear you read from Bloodline today.
Yes. Thank you, Sandy. it's such a pleasure to be here to read with Lana, Thomas, and Julene, and of course, like anything Sandy creates, I love participating in. So thank you everyone so much. I'm really happy to be here. And yeah, Sandy, you sound great. Thanks for showing up, even though you're recovering from sickness. So I think everything Sandy mentioned is on my mind today as I'm moving forward into the new year. So there's individual griefs and also collective grief, as always. Los Angeles is on my mind. I have family in LA and have been like really heartbroken by the wildfires this week, as I think a lot of us have been. So um, I think, it's funny because like some of this I think I had glimpses of these feelings in my collection, which was, I first started writing 8 years ago. And so this has been happening this whole time. And I was kind of looking for poems to read today that reflected some of what I've been feeling this week. So I'll just say briefly about my collection, which came out with the fabulous MoonPath in September. It started out as a sort of examination of family systems and the individual relationships within family systems, um, lineage and inheritance, and it quickly became an excavation into, of course, the larger systems around us, um, white supremacy culture, capitalism, climate disruption, and all of which are causing climate disruption, the patriarchy. So it's really a look at like um, the individual and the familial and how that serves as a microcosm for the larger systems at play that we all internalize. And the first poem is called Americana. I actually started writing it around the first time that Trump was elected in 2016, because there was this sense of, I think, especially growing up rural in deep in the woods in the Pacific Northwest, like I did, there's this sense of like fear of our neighbors and what we don't know about our neighbors, and the sort of like how isolated we become from each other. So I'll start with this poem called Americana. Every night, we hear the sound of someone running through the trees, as though something is trying to come unstuck, a trapped animal throwing itself at the unyielding edges. When my brothers investigate, they report, no ghost here, just the neighbor boy running back and forth in the dark. No one comments on the strangeness of this event, what the darkness does to a person, how the systems disconnect us, but how little we know about our neighbors frightens me. Because some needs are unsolvable, my mother preserves old longings in me like pressed flowers. Eventually, I learn it is only acceptable to have a need if I can keep it to myself. Thus, when, after 4 days without power, I hear a phantom panting in my ear, I think, of course, my ghost is wolfish hunger. And everyone knows a hunger chambered grows deranged, desert flung, like a voice in isolation. In the parceled land, the nation's steady vernacular of ownership and borders invents trespassing. And at dusk, a high whistle splits the tree line. Unanswered, this call for an animal's return floats, a lonely fluorescence above our properties, now fractured as night comes. To watch my family, like all other families, participate in this system is to feel myself panic. The future's coin spins on one edge. This has happened many times before. Thank you. And I just have to say, I love reading. I love just, again, participating in anything Sandy does because you have the biggest hearted, tenderest, most generous approach to poetry. And there's nothing more joyful than being in poetry community with you, Sandy. So thank you for your support. And we met at exactly the right time. So I'm really grateful to be in this space with you right now. Yeah, Sandy's amazing. Yeah. All right. So this is I'm going to read a poem called Bloodline, which is one of the book is called Bloodline, and throughout the book there are these repeating poems, all called Bloodline. And I saw them as this sort of I saw it as this thread that runs throughout the book where the speaker is exploring how their own individual and family stories are connected to sort of the larger systems. And this is, excuse me, a winter poem. It takes place in the dead of winter in the Pacific Northwest, so I thought it would be appropriate for reading today. Bloodline. The winter our animal dies, nothing else particularly bad happens, except I am out of my mind absorbing the sadness around me. I think she took the cancer from my body into hers, my mother says, referring to the dog who is currently dying by the wood stove. The whole scene and the night's damp animal spell so sad I want to laugh. As always, the imaginative realm approaches, kindly but unworkably. There are many possible holes, entries. At night, I lean my face into any of these openings to sleep. What to do with this old family habit of feeling shame for one's survival? It pools at our feet, apologies for joy embroidered in floral reds. When my brother became sick, I was 16. In my body, a recklessness glittered, dark as salt. I thought his illness was because I had not been paying enough attention. The feelings, they will kill me someday. The steady flow of them into and out of my reality like thin milk. To leave would mean surrendering them all to this weather. And in solitude, my guilt cuts, sharp as collarbone, as hip bone, self-denial, a clear sea, asking as I have been, how long are you going to punish yourself? And where does a bloodline dry up? And where is its source? All right. 'Cause, 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 'cause Thank you. Um, so I think I'm going to shift into sort of some of those were some poems that were rooted more in family and individual systems. And then I'm going to open up outward into some meditations on the larger systems that live inside of us all. So this was, written during the pandemic. I was sitting on I-5 and inhaling wildfire smoke, or trying not to inhale wildfire smoke during the 2020 fires. I was stuck in traffic on I-5 and was like, had this feeling of like, I'm gonna freak out. Um, and, we'd been watching folks hoarding resources during the pandemic out of fear. And so this is the poem born out of it. And I mean, I think we're still in it. Uh, the many panics of this century. Deep inside some problem of self-perception, a human face believes very much in its own importance. It charges its electronics often, and when a face finally alights upon the desired object, it buys all of it. To have too much of many good things, to know that everything can be undone. This is how a small life can be as prepared as possible. Hoarded goods, a kettle of rested water to secure against winter's lightlessness. Or what if again long travel approaches on highways wedged and pressed between hot machines, the brown dust on fire, to which a human face can respond like a scared domestic thing or like a crazier animal. For what if it cannot be returned? What if this direction cannot be taken back? Okay. All right. And so I'm going to read I'm going to read two more poems. Yes, I lost track of when I started reading, but I think that should be good. This is called Ghost in the Shell Daughter, and it's when you're in your late 30s, as I am, the question comes up often around kids and why I don't have them, and if I'm having them, and when, and I don't have kids yet, and so this was a poem that was born out of that, and also just sitting with the current state of the world, my own desire for family, and also like this sense of trying to grapple with before what's before me and how overwhelming it becomes. Ghost in the Shell, Daughter. The greening copper question, will you have children? As the years pass, unfruitfully, therefore uneconomically. And my uncertain response, when I myself feel no sense of self-possession here, but instead belong to everyone who needs me. Each day coming apart, beholden to each individual or system I brush up against. I need evenings, stars calm as water, to cool and knit myself back to a single form. Trembling against the urge to disappear, how does the self survive when the day becomes a market? And on the long commute home, the darkness hides the urgencies of strangers. Labor's husks sail moonlit highways, and in one apartment, a woman oils and combs her long damaged hair. She believes her deep fatigue, which is the fatigue of erosion, to be instead an illusion of her tangled nerves, trash fires at her mind's periphery. I didn't realize the hardest part would be trusting one's own perception of reality. The hardest part, locating the ghost when it's the 21st century and the world doesn't look like the world anymore, but instead like images, digital signifiers. The sky softly destabilizes. It feels like a burning. More wildfire imagery. So again, I think this book was written kind of a long time ago now, and it's just we're all still in it together. All right. So I'm going to read one more poem. This is called Nothing is as Dark as an Island. And yeah, I'm going to say it's for Thomas, who I've read with a couple times now, and whose work, I mean, I think Julene, Lana, and Thomas's work has all really, really impacted me. Um, and Thomas's in particular, I think there's something connected. There's a connective thread in our work around grief, even though they're very different kinds of grief. But there's a sense of gr holding on to grief, sort of being present in this like collective experience. So like there's some comfort in individual grief that comes when we know that we are touching on a deeply collective ex shared experience that everyone experiences. Um, so nothing is as dark as an island. Like a loose horse on a northern beach, I am strange and stunned by my capacity for shape-shifting, and by grief's transmutations, which are just the self's vowels released into oceanic darkness, where nothing is calculable, and the night's weight, a dark sapphire animal, drinks from the human world, the sound of wind or a wing beat, the Pacific's dark rise, moves with a tender anarchism, shapeless at the bite of us. At the edge of the dissolution of self, a soundless chasm opening, this fatelessness demands a release of power, nothing, not loyalty to family systems, nor to men, nor to some dying economic laws, dictations for what I am and what constitutes a life can survive. I've heard that buried in every timeline are portals into others, which one day you might simply step through, only realizing much later that you did step through and were thus transformed. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sandy.
My gosh, that's Ansley Clark, everyone. Oh my gosh. Just a few things I want to say about your reading that is really holding the space for the rest of the reading. And of course, that's what you do all the time in your day-to-day work is just hold such exquisite space. These poems hold such thoughtful space. Somebody put that in the chat. Please do look at the chat for all the comments. And their prescience really belies the poem's existence. And I remember sitting with you talking about poetry as I was putting the glass studio together, which folks that don't know, like Ansley and I were having meetings the summer before I moved to Connecticut, and they really turned into these incredible sessions that helped me put the glass studio together. And you were saying, the kernels of your next book are here in this book. And just remember that. There were many, many other things, very wise things that you said. And this collection of Bloodline does all those things that you were sharing with me and talking about what does a book hold? How does it hold the past, the present, and the future? And we were talking about the glass studio, but it's all in Bloodline too. So there's such an unbelievable deep knowing that you have, that you possess about poetry. And everyone in this room has just witnessed it. I've been fortunate to have witnessed it a number of times. And one of our earliest things that we did together was give a reading at Evergreen. So that was my beautiful introduction to your poetry, hearing your poetry, even though we were talking about poetry. Ansley, I look forward for so much to come with you. And I'm really glad to be able to say that publicly and that we have a recording of this because I look forward to that time in the future when I'll be able to say, remember that reading then, back then in 2025. So continue to go forth, my beloved friend, and thank you for being here today. Well, folks, we move to Thomas. This is so moving. The whole reading is so moving. We move to my other dear friend and my co-host of last Tuesdays with Sandy and Thomas with the Olympia Poetry Network. Our upcoming reading is going to be on the 29th. I believe it's the 29th. I could be wrong. It's the 28th of January. Our guest will be Jed Myers. If you're in the Olympia Poetry Network, you'll be hearing more about that. Folks, Thomas has been with us since the very, very early days of Cultivating Voices. You've been hearing his poems that have, travailed the journeys that lives do. And it's such an honor now to have Thomas's poems collected into this exquisite, exquisite book that is My Heart Is Not Asleep. Everything that Thomas has shared with us has given us the evidence of a most awake and caring poet and human. And I look forward to, I'm just so excited to be able to finally have you on a new book showcase. I get to hear your poetry all the time, and it is a joy and it is a delight and it's its own medicine for me also as navigating those terrains of grief. Every one of us in this room has done it, is doing it, will continue to do it. So congratulations on this book, my friend. Thomas A. Thomas lives gratefully in the Pacific Northwest. His new poetry collection, My Heart Is Not Asleep, from MoonPath Press 2024, is a memoir in poems following the journey of falling in love with, then losing his beloved to early onset Alzheimer's. Thomas's work has appeared in McQueen's Quarterly, Verse Daily, the Tupelo 3030 Project, Gyroscope Review, and many other publications. His poetry has been nominated for Best Spiritual Literature for 2025, as well as for the Pushcart Prize in 2022 and 2024. The accolades are just starting, my friend. No worries. That list is going to get longer. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Sandy, and Kim and Don for providing this amazing global safe stage for poetry and humans. And thank you, Lana, of course, for the community of poets that you've built here at MoonPath Press and at Concrete Wolf. I am just honored to be part of both families who are not just wonderful poets, but loving human beings. So, I'll see if I can go on. I've been rereading My Heart Is Not Asleep this week for an online kind of text interview, they call them, but it's funny. You get the questions and you write an answer, and then it's published as an interview. But the question was, did you plan the metaphors and the lightness and darkness and the grief and joy and metaphors and imagery or for in the arc of the book? And it's like, well, really, the short answer is no. you know, I did discover things later, while putting together the manuscript and giving it some shape. But really, I realized each poem was sort of a life ring that I found in the waves, to keep from sinking, Each is its own experience, and whether it's grief or joy, it may look like a microcosm because it's about my wife, theoretically at least. But I think, as someone said earlier today, the grief is grief, whether it's about objects of meaning that you've lost, or people that you've lost, or your own faculties. So I looked at some different poems. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say is, it's almost 5 years. It was lockdown time when Cultivating Voices came along, and I was among the first 3 readings, I think, when we were still reading on our phones. And anyway, I'm going to start with Around Us. A beam of full moonlight falls through the skylight and graces our pillows, our faces, lights up dust motes like stars turning silently above our bed. Reflected silver lights the high knotty pine ceiling and the knotty pine walls, each knot, you said, a galaxy. Around us lie our halos of moonlight. Around us drift the dusty stars. Around us turn the galaxies. Outside, as it is inside, our beloved bodies. Light stirs the sacred matter. The atoms germinated, scattered by eons exploded and long gone dark stars. I guess you don't have vast grief without vast love. Coppola's Prayers. I'm walking at night when a breeze sets grass blades in motion, writing silent prayers in the sand. Sparrows, mice, and insect have left signs of their pilgrim paths among the burdocks. The pearled prayer shawls of the spiders are hung everywhere around the marsh by moonlight, and we mingle our footprints, mine and yours, in dune grass along the sand path beside the marsh, a prayer written by our feet. But come the slanted sunlight of morning, I find only my own. So time passes and the separation is growing, but we're still together. And I'm going to read the one that the book title comes from the epigraph of The Sirens Before Dawn. No, my heart is not asleep. It is awake, wide awake, not asleep, not dreaming. And that's Machado, Antonio Machado. 1. Some black hour past midnight, and I am dreaming at the rim of the vast silence of Odysseus, hearing those first fatal notes in a strange distance beyond his sight. When a sound enters slowly winding from some great darkness into my ear, base of my skull, down my spine, pierces my chest like an icy blade aching, something like a terrified moan, a whimper, a keening, a ghostly ululation wrung from the straining throat of my love, my wife, from some deep and ancient abyss. I gasp awake, hairs risen on my neck, adrenaline racing my heart as the sound echoes, reverberations fading as I reach across to gather her head on my shoulder. Everything is all right, my love. You are safe, you are warm and good. I am here and I am not going anywhere without you, dear, sweetly beloved. 2. Your forehead against my throat, your breathing, the only measure I know of time. We sink in the warm dark where once, so long ago, I might have turned my lips to just touch the tiny hairs of your forehead, trace their way to your temple hollow, my breath warming the scent of your skin, your hair, the space behind your earlobe, as you, still under the blanket of sleep, turn ever so subtly toward me, arching and offering, throat, collarbone, the valley between the breathing arcs of your breasts, your nipples stiffening between my lips as tongue-tip traces tightened aureoles, yes, and yes, our yeses growing and burning. In that other life we had, that gone cosmos. And one of the amazingly difficult things about this journey was just its duration and the time, the years that passed. So I'm going to read In a Time, which I think incidentally had its debut on Cultivating Voices. And it sort of changed the arc of my trajectory as a poet. In a Time. There are times when I feel trapped in time, and this is one of those times. The year 2020, a time in the impossible future I expected not to be alive to see, and the month is August, and August is the month and time of litany. It is the month of my one wedding, the month of gaining a son who could have been 31. It is the month of our first walk along the salt shore together, and of my beloved's first illness, harbinger of worse to come. Month of our lost mortgage, of bankruptcy, August of learning my only brother had renal cell carcinoma, would follow my father to that hard darkness so soon. The month of disability determination, August of a diagnosis at last, terribly final as it is. And it is still the month berries ripen along humid vines, corn ears swell in steamy fields as fawns fatten out of their spots, gorging on clover blossoms and dandelion blooms, as seal pups bask between fishing lessons, as fingerlings flash to avoid shadows, as kingfisher young learn not to make shadows as they dive. It is the month apples begin to blush at the thought of falling. Time of joy upon joy, joy upon sorrow, time of sorrow, time of love upon love upon love. Let's see. So that's external time that's going on as well as internal time. But here's another moment of letting go. And it's got parentheticals. It's called Good Morning, My Love. And it's like the morning I was letting her go to the care of other people. Good morning, my love. You try to say this as if it were not the last time. Here's your glasses as you slip them onto her nose, again as if. Then you have her sitting, yes, on the edge of the bed, knowing, and brush her hair long and slowly back of her shoulders. And when her eyes close, you touch her lips with a strawberry, which is this one and only moment, all and everything we know. I have time for two more. Okay, I sort of lost myself there.
We sometimes get lost in the air. It's okay. It's all good.
Let's try. Last of the kayak soliloquies. Because being out in the Pacific Northwest and nature was one of the things that helped my resilience and just sustained me. Last of the kayak soliloquies. Months have spun past, silence, clear and cold and resonant like air after the bell is no longer heard. So many blessings to count today, adrift on a mirror of salt water. So much good I must remember to remember. And sometimes it takes such a day as this to help do so, a day both glorious and still. My paddling waves and those of the geese with their watchful eyes are the largest out here. One small plane flew over. I heard a family walking along the gravel shore, parents pointing the birds out to the children, and now there's almost nothing to hear. This moment, it's me and feathers on ripples and the last fog burning off like thoughts of her. And then it ends where it began, sort of at the sea and the cosmos. Of course, she's gone now, but at the end of the book, she was still with me. Tides. She opens her blue-green eyes, and I feel the sea tug at my ribs, though she remains in the little boat of her hospital bed. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. So much. I'm going to keep it brief. You know, grief and love, they are so tidal. They are so tidal. It is the perfect metaphor. It really, truly works. The waves, the sea, all of it, the little boat, all of it works. And I think it works so well because you bring such a tremendous, tremendous tenderness and this ability to hold grief and love seamlessly together. They are their own partners, and we experience them that way in your book, and it is extraordinary. I mean, we all as poets write about grief and love, but I have over the years, as I've heard poem upon poem debut with us, or maybe not always debut, but that I've heard the poems, it's an entirely other experience to have them cascade one after another, to see them in to see them all together, to hear them all together, to hear the power of how that the love just crescendos as the grief is coming in to the shore. The love just increases. And that I don't know of a better I don't know of a better way that you could have honored your beloved, Thomas. You know, who would not want to be remembered in this way if this was the life they were cast? So I just want to just offer that to you for whatever that's worth. That's my experience. Thank you. And of course, look at all the comments you'll see all the comments. So keep writing, my friend. Keep writing. Keep living. Keep living. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. A big, 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 big. I don't have a big heart. I don't have a heart big enough for you. I don't have a heart big enough for you. All right, my friends. Everyone, I've been trying to explain what MoonPath does, and you're seeing it in living color today. Oh my gosh. It is huge. My arms are not big enough to hug it. It is the biggest thing that this press is able to put out book after book after book so prismatically. And Kim always reminds people that that's one of my words. And that's the word of what we're seeing today in our new book showcase. I have such unbelievable respect for our next reader, Julene Tripp. I have been reading her poetry and appreciating her poetry for a number of years, more than a number of years. And she brings something incredibly different to the table and equally necessary and important. And anytime I am in the experience of one of Julene's poems, I truly feel like I am a better human being. I have the capacity to become a more aware citizen on this planet and to bring more love and awareness to each moment that I'm honored to have here. That's how her poetry reaches me. Well, Julene Tripp is a retiring psychotherapist and writer in Seattle. Her fourth poetry collection, Slow Now with Clear Skies, was published by MoonPath Press. Of course it was. Her prior collection, Truth Be Bold, Serenading Life and Death in the Age of AIDS, won the Bisexual Book Award, 4 Human Relations Indie Book Awards, and was a finalist for the Lambda Literary Awards. I'm getting chills as I say this. Her work is widely published in journals and anthologies, and in 2023, she was a fellow in the Jack Straw Writing Program. It's really amazing program in Seattle that amplifies and holds writers to have this container for them to really learn how to step into their presentation as poets. It's such, I'm so glad that you kept persisting with me to say, okay, can we be on the program together? And I'm so glad today is the day, Julene. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here for the first time at Cultivating Voices. I'm delighted to be here with all these wonderful MoonPath Press authors. I've had the great privilege of reading with Ansley. We read together at Book Tree. And Thomas was at It's About Time, one of my favorite Seattle readings, and I was the host that night, and it was such an honor to host him that evening. So these, and of course, Lana and I go way back. The first time I heard her read in Kirkland, Washington, in an open mic, I was floored, and I reached out, and we've stayed in touch since before my first book was published, and it was her who gave me the belief that I would eventually have a book. And now I have 4, which I'm really just honored and grateful for. So thank you to everyone here. I'm going to do something, I'm going to read poems that I've not read in any readings tonight. So it's for whatever reason, this feels like the time to do this. And we are all feeling the weight right now of the fires, of the election, of the pain that is in our world. And this first poem is titled Social Distance. And that was the word we began to hear at the beginning of the pandemic, social distancing. We need each other every single day, month, year, generation. Interdependent, we reach out, barn raised with our neighbors. Community, we lift each other up, gather round a fire, a hearth, sing, organize a union, speak unfettered our worry and love. We travel across boundaries, move ageless like cowboy poets spreading news region to region. The call for knowledge lifted from truth and source, a wide web, little insistence on independence. We understand how frail each human. The idea of a superhero manifests in good deeds. Lassie barked, "Help, he needs help." And there was a rescue. How can I learn to lean on others when touch is extracted from my bones? When I no longer care who sees me at my worst? What deep-seated fear rolls me from a plethora of necessary help from another? My partner rubs my back with healing herbs. He, the only one I expect support from. The one who is there, trusted. We have a couple bubble, faith and love. But how many have even one person in these hazardous times? My friend with asthma, suffocated by smoke, left. Took a plane to Chicago, then a plane to Portland, Maine, with no plan, with little money, no credit card, no one to meet her at either airport. She used the last of her cash for this grand escape so she could breathe, fires encroaching her home. She asked for donations I wish I had to give. This is a time of risk and daring for those on the edge of survival, our world on the slope of decline. We roll into mire, claw through mud to the top of a hill already crowded. Those who slip and die, the earth accepts as filler. This next poem has to do with the food in on our planet. Some of you know I'm an herbalist and I do wild crafting. I go out, I make a lot of my own medicines, tinctures, cough syrup when I need it, etc. And the food situation in our world is dire. It's, as we know, corporate driven. As a matter of fact, I've been hearing that they're forcing farms to close in California right now. And what we have going on in our world, as we all know, is deplorable. Food chain. When it is time to die, as if we can count the time to the inevitable, barred from the knowledge of the stars, the moon and planets shift into alignment with secret knowledge. All life cracked in the cell, waiting for moisture to release what is stone hard. We swallow pits. Death grows its own path of resilience. How much can we absorb of immeasurable substance? Circumstances of nations prevail. The economics of soy or corn overrides the necessity of potatoes. Empty lots. The push of law decides what seeds survive, will be cloned or irradiated, what nuclear genocide we ingest day in, day out. We must fight back, preserve the wild, allow insects to live their natural lives, harmonious nature to swallow us into her fold. Shift a little bit. There's a lot of family poems in this book. This is a kind of an early impression poem from childhood. Slow growth. Bombarded by men who could sit hours on a lake in a boat waiting for a fish to bite. Patience her virtue. We had few options. I was a girl in the country who had to save myself. Mother had hands like scissors, a mouth with no words. Hoping for the best, after we moved, I followed the dream, rebellion, independence. I escaped into city parks, crushed pennies on railroad tracks. Nothing was right. I said no to unwanted advances, forging a path. My dreams grew and the clouds cleared. I had to get small before I could get big. Dreams squelched too easy after father died. But there is something about moving on despite all odds against. Miracles live on the horizon. A tiny seed I could have discarded, but I held it in my dark center. It had to germinate a long time. It was cheerless and mournful for years. With no other option but to press forward, it finally bloomed like an orchid that took forever, then stunned me with love. At the beginning of the pandemic, I learned that my sister learned that she had cancer. And so I haven't seen her through this last 5 years. I'm going to be seeing her this year. One of my ways of grieving was to read a lot of poetry, and I wrote a cento, and it's just titled Cento for My Younger Sister with Multiple Myeloma. And there's some references in here that are particular to us. For example, we took a trip to Paris together in, I think, 95. She collects eggs because our family were dairy farmers. So I'll just read you this, and it does have a curse in it. Cento for my younger sister with multiple myeloma. There have been monsters under my heart since I was born. You see, I had no sister when I was little. A dove that nests in Paris walls has warmed a cuckoo's egg. I am in her like dust in a tornado, night in a star, ice in a glacier. I love my sister. I need my sister to wade in the dark night water, to sneak in and out of back doors, saying the spell under my breath that no life is slight enough to pass. How fuck you becomes a love song. I predict that losing you specifically will be too much to bear. You are a species that knows it will go extinct. This is how I will let go of loss, by carrying you with me. After a hug, the between is holdable. Fortune tell a sense of longing and loss. I cannot love without a sister. I whisper, how long do we have? To no one in particular. My sister is 8 years younger than me. And to think she might die before me when I'm the one who contracted HIV is just devastating. The next poem I'm going to read is a bit lighter. And because I was limiting it to 15 minutes, it's technically the last one, but I have one more I could read after that if I have enough time. And this is I think maybe a spiritual poem. It has two characters in it. And what I'm going to do is try to read one of the characters in a voice that, well, you'll see. It's like a little witch child or something, and then the other voice is myself. And there's book in it, so I'll sort of do this when the words from the book come up. Through the lens, 7 revolutionary practices. She looks at the world through her mean stare. He and I meet for tea. On the wall is a framed photo, the cover of a book. Anxious to please? 7 revolutionary practices for the chronically nice. So many people I know need to double confirm, but not this friend. She has eyes that penetrate with distrust. We sit in the tea house. One must show up. I order herbal chai. He orders Snow White, a green tea. She rarely wants anything to do with anyone. What bugs me as we sit and drink our tea is his dust-laden glasses. One must be present when one shows up. I sit wondering, how can he see clearly? This gravely distracts me. She guards her words, a dragon in front of her castle home. We talk, but I don't mention the dust. One must keep the commitment one makes. He and I are friends, yet never met for tea. She's wary of people, has names for them: grabbers, swindlers, child thieves. Secretly, I think this book on the chronically nice must be meant for me. One must keep one's word. The question, how can he see clearly, is blatantly consuming me. She'll bite and bark and scratch her eyes out like a cat, a lion. I find it hard to relax into the now with my Zen cup of tea. Be here now. He said he'd be here, but is he? But am I? She's used to the fight. You can see it in her untamed hair. And how nice do I have to be? Certainly, I'm distracted from the moment. One must say what one has to say. Another question puzzles me. How well do I really know this friend? She's used to sitting on curbs alongside the sidewalk. I clean my glasses obsessively each and every day, lost, wondering about the habits people cultivate. How can he see clearly with dusty lenses? She's grown up fast and fighting. Can I rely on someone with dust-laden glasses? Breathe. A microfiber cloth in my bag. I watch his eyes through the dust. She won't allow herself to be pushed around. I wonder about the 7 revolutionary practices. I take my glasses off to see more clearly, pour yet another cup of tea. Hopefully, I didn't just make a fool of myself. Should I read one more, Sandy?
Right ahead, go right ahead.
Thank
We
you.
have 90 minutes. We're good. We're good.
Okay. I'm going to go to a kind of an older one called Starting Over. In the running water of time, I slipped over a threshold, back roads, wide abyss, deep. A bird squawks in the dark night. Scattered noise, the pads of my feet long for ground. This tumble like combat to survive. Reliance on deep heart, kindness. I've landed, it seems, a million times. In rooms I grew to love, restructured each life in a firm grip despite the fall. Unsteady toes flounder to feel land or mud, even sand on a craggy beach, rocks in a stream. A voice calls, here, and reaches out a warm hand. Energy surges through my body. I meld into a new tomorrow. It worked out. A door opened I could not have seen. A red bird flickers across the sky. Do what is possible. Reclaim a home. Fierce desire to be safe. A lock installed. No longer carry on for circling turkey vulture. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. I keep saying, oh my gosh, after each one of you read, because each of these readings is just so extraordinary. I love the mind and the will of these poems of yours. They just, they grab me. They hold me and they grab me and they keep my attention to strive to understand the inexplicable within myself better. There's not much more that I can ask of a poem to do that, to do that thing, to do that thing. And of course, poems, as we know, they do so many things. But that skill of a poem, that is not what every poet can approach and bring to the writing or the delivery of a poem. And I am absolutely astounded by the experience of them. Yeah, I have to read them over. That Through the Lens poem in particular, so much there about the lack of clarity and the clarity of human connection. Incredible. Thank you. Thank you beyond thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, folks, our final reader for today is the brainchild of why we're all together and why this constellation of poets is able to be with us. And I'm sure that if you are sitting here with me, you continue to be as riveted as you're riveted from each of these waves of poetry experience. And because I've not only heard Lana Hechtman Ayres read many times and talk about her poetry, and I've also read with her in rounds and rounds of poems where we contemplated each other's poems, I can tell you, just prepare to be riveted once again. Get up off your seat because you're going to be riveted to it in another moment. I mean, Lana is become one of my absolute go-to poets. And she's also like just an editor that I respect beyond respect because I mean, again, you're seeing the results of what she puts into a press right before your very eyes. And there's more. All of her poets are like this. And we have had the good fortune in Olympia in particular to hear MoonPath Press poet after MoonPath Press poet come through Olympia. And all of you here from the Olympia Poetry Network, you know what I'm talking about because we talked about it in our board meetings. So I just want to say thank you so much to Lana for helping bring this poetry reading together. And then there's her poetry. I'm going to let her showcase that on her own and let you experience it. But I am just starstruck, moonstruck, sunstruck, just struck by her poems time and time again. Lana Hechtman Ayres, cat mama, dog mama, sky watcher, recovering coffee addict, former New Yorker, writes in a room over her garage in Oregon. She's too humble, my friends. She leads generative workshops, helps poets assemble their manuscripts, and manages 3 small presses where she's fostered over 130 books into the world. And we get to hear from some of her own this afternoon, evening. Thank you, Lana. Big love coming your way.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Big love back. I really appreciate Don Krieger, Kim Parsons, and Sandra Yannone. I mean, this reading series is globally relevant. It is just, if you haven't attended any of the readings, check the backlist, watch all the videos. I mean, this is just incredible food for the universe. You have to. You just have to. And I want to say also that I am so incredibly blessed as a publisher to have had the honor to publish all of the poets at MoonPath Press. And I have to tell you, when we got on today, and Sandy said, so the order is, and I was last on the list, I had this extreme panic in my chest. Like, what? I have to follow MoonPath Press poets? Are you kidding me? I can't do that. But I sat there, I folded my hands and said, yeah, okay, I'll try my best. I mean, really, it's my goal, it's my hope, it's my extreme desire to live up to the quality, the beauty, the integrity, the necessity of the poets that I publish at MoonPath. I mean, that would be a dream realized for me. So thank you. And I appreciate all of those folks in the audience today being here for poetry. Poetry just brings us together as human beings and makes us more compassionate and kind souls. And we need everything poetry has to offer. So thank you for being here today too. And I also want to thank my press, which is Fernwood Press, and they are a division of Barclay, which is a Quaker press, and also an Oregon press. So I really appreciate Eric Muir and everyone at Fernwood Press for the work that they do. They also are, they're not just a regional press, they're a global press as well, and a spiritual press. And I appreciate being one of their authors. So thank you to them as well. And thank you to Andrea Couch, the artist, to allow me to use her beautiful painting on the cover of my book. I'm a huge fan of her work. And we'll start with this poem called Wonder. Sky above never leaves us, never abandons us, though it wears inscrutable masks, blues, grays, whites, kaleidoscopes of dusk and dawn, black sails of night, all those stars tiptoeing around, and the floating moon, like a brooch I coveted my grandma used to wear on Sabbath days, crystals that scatter danced, waxing and waning crescents of golden light all over the synagogue, proof of glory. Such arrogance, I breathe the sky, exhale nothing but devotion. This next one is called Immovable Clouds, and it was written during a strange April. It does hardly ever snows in the part of Oregon which I live, which is coastal Oregon, but this was an April snowstorm, which was even stranger. So that's where this poem came from. Immovable Clouds. Outside, snow falls like a dream of snow falling. Coastal weather inscrutable as my black cat curled beside the wood stove. Girls in sweeping hoop skirts twirl vivid oil paper umbrellas, stroll the April parade, Japanese lanterns aglow, against slow gray sky. One ruby Fuji dropped by an onlooker rolls in the gutter. A spark shorn of its wick halts at a storm drain. No one dashes to reclaim it. It's late afternoon in the 21st century. Silence is an attitude of shadow. I turn from the drafty window, my green tea still steaming. Clouds swirl within the bone white cup, whirling eddies, snowdrifts in pale spring light. My life is far from over. And this next one is kind of a poem I think I wrote as a reminder to myself of how to get through difficult times. It's called Elegy for Tenderness. Uncapturable in the past as grasping at wind. Though now, if I draw my eyes up to breathe sky, a graceful arc of wings can stand in for tenderness. Or encountering across the grocery aisle a stranger's smile. On a misty eve, the waning moon, butterfly pinned to celestial velvet, sighs with me. The world's crowded some places, empty others, all of us alone in our own skins. Any lit wick that brightens without burn suffices. As you can probably tell from my poems, I stare out the window a lot. I look at the sky a lot. I write about the moon constantly. Here's another window poem. Window in late January. Snow today in this place where it doesn't often snow. Wet flakes blow sideways. Leaves on the salal flipping like pages in some urgent book writ with forgotten wisdom. And the far off fir and cedar bristle their branches wistfully, as if hung with the wet laundry of soldiers returned home from a long war that, like all wars, cannot be won. A dishwasher sky mutes sun rays to gray. The hills leading to the pass, forested in haze, drained of green. The beach paths untrodden, the sea crests cold foam for no one, not man, nor hound, nor soaring gull, nor majestic eagle. Though a steady bluster, the wind musters nothing but silence. The plodding sound of melt, drip, drip, drips from the askew, rusted rain gutter outside my purview. Perhaps I have all my life been too much in love with sadness. And I think probably 99% of the bios I've written over the years talk about the Starry Night, which is a painting that I fell in love with early, as you'll hear in this poem. And this one is called The Starry Night. Thanks, Sandy. And most of you know MoMA is the Museum of Modern Art. The Starry Night at MoMA in New York at 18. I discovered Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night. I stood so close after the security guard walked by. I smelled the century between us, heard the cry of wet paint long since dried. I had no context for the tortured life of a man, a culture and religion apart, had no knowledge of the asylum from whence the scene arose. Yet in that moment, I felt Van Gogh as soul twin, one who understood the world is never still. Impending darkness and the cacophony of exploding light engaged in a fight for domination. His cypress tree like the sword of doctrine piercing the fabric of time. I have never been at home anywhere but in that painting, or else in the rain, where drops become my shroud, my sanctuary, song without need of lyrics. Whoever knows what they were born for is truly fortunate. I scribble in notebook after notebook as if to clear the way by making it muddier. I want to know if it matters, any of it, Earth, humanity, a few humans in particular, perhaps even myself. Alone in my apartment, looking out, the stars like drops of rain glistening on the window panes of the universe. I've come to believe by way of pain and a singular painting that if love is the answer, no question matters more than any other. And this book is dedicated to my poetry mentor, Patricia Fargnoli, who died in 2021. And she was an early poetry mentor of mine. And it was her belief in my work that allowed me to believe in it. And I don't think I would have sent any poems out into the world. And I know for certain that none of my books would exist if she had not believed in me and given me the gift of her friendship and become a cheerleader of my work for all those years. The title of this poem is from a line in one of Patricia Fargnoli's poems. Become sand, become ocean, become sky. And it's from her poem Coda. At the cabin in Pemaquid, Maine, we were as fluid as mist that socked in the mornings of our retreat days. Soft and surreal, so that our words sighed like the ocean outside, lighthouse a quick step stroll away. Our poems glided onto pages Mobius as seagulls. We colored in white lines with blue glass bowls, a tambourine, a teapot, giant beguiling aisles. Meanwhile, the world far away from our mystical poet's globe seethed with the usual meanness. Injustice, war, oozing angers that transform anything, even furniture, into weapons. The rocking chair smashed against a wall. All we knew was tall beach grass, shifting dunes, the calls of owls high in the pines at night, wind-scattered stars. The last day, we went our separate ways, back to our opposing coasts, flipped cities. Had I known that it would be the last time I'd ever see you, no tears, no parting words. only breath on one another's cheeks, our oblique poems of being. A hug so tight, I'd still be holding you now. And this last poem, we're all thinking about all of those in California and the fires and the rescuers. And this last poem was kind of about a rescue. I used to live quite near the beach, and this was about a rescue that I learned about from a neighbor. It's called Every Hour. Dawn began with the sight of red lights flashing on numerous trucks, crowded by the beach entrance, some emergency that brought out firemen and state police, sheriff, and ambulance. And now, as daylight moves toward dusk, a doe, ears pitched upright, perhaps by the clacking of my old keyboard, pauses its chewing on the native salal, stares into my open window with eyes that seem to see right through me and my fallow pursuit of words. How swiftly the world shifts from safety to siren. Every hour, some new threat opens like bud, ripens like berry, and all the while crows frolic in the broken glass-strewn grass. Sparrows flitter across live electrical wires and remain largely unharmed. We humans come into this life entirely reliant on others for survival, but shortly thereafter come to understand death is the inevitable through line for everyone, and only luck and bluster get us most of the way there intact. It is a fact that our home planet spins on an axis. Though we seem fixed and upright as the sky wheels its day star and night moon through the pane of ever-changing horizons, what lies ahead is more of the same and nothing we can imagine. This morning's emergency, our next door neighbor tells me when I am out in the evening walking with my two dogs, was a surfer taken under the waves by riptide, drowning, fighting for his life as one after another family member rushed in to help, succumbing to the omnipotent seawater themselves. But one stranger dove in and rose again. So everyone left breathing, he said. Good news in the end. And that seems a fitting summary for what we all want. Breathing in every hour until the good news of our demise arrives. And hopefully it is good news because we lived with joy despite all the pain that came calling once and again, but also vanished for stretches. And we watched with awe the inquisitive deer watching us, munching idly on leaves. And we dipped a toe or two or a few into the almighty ocean. And we told ourselves over and over the very stories we wanted to hear. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And thanks to everyone. Thanks to Sandy again and Don and Kim. And thank you especially to the MoonPath Press readers who have blessed my lives by allowing me to put their work out into the world.
I don't I don't even know what to say. Oh my gosh, I give you the starry night once again. I give you the starry night once again. I always like to take this out when you read. Um, you know, Scott Delgado wrote in the chat, just wrote humility, and like you are a poet of such humility, as if not emblematic in that line. It says it all. If love is the answer, the question hardly matters. What a stark, pointed, absolute star of light right there, just in that line, as with so many of your poems, leading to all of those conclusions that open us up to more questions and hopefully more answers that bring more questions and just bring us closer to the best that we can be, the best that we could aspire to be. That's what I really think your poetry reaches for. It just is pulling, it is a gravitational pull toward my best self. That's what your poems do for me.
Thank you.
And I mean, never more. And also, this constellation today, we've had now, I don't even know how many new book showcases. They are all very special, but I truly love when they feel unbelievably circular to me. From your last poem, every hour, to Ansley's first poem, Americana, and how we moved. It was a movement. It was like a symphony today. Those are the new book showcases that like rivet me. They give me chills and they give me warmth to just carry on. And I never forget them. Like I will never forget it. So I hope for you, Lana, reading with the poets that you curated was a beautiful experience. I know that you host readings with them, but to be in community with them in a reading, I hope brought something very special for you. And I know the press mates, the siblings are all happy puppies to be with each other because that's what it's like. So, folks, please unmute and thank Ansley Clark, Thomas A. Thomas, Julene Tripp Weaver, and Lana Hechtman Ayres for this beautiful first new book showcase in January, when it is in this part of the world. We need all the light and love and lifting that we can get. Please do unmute and show your appreciation for a moment. Thank you.
Woohoo!
Oh, sweet souls.
So sweet
Thanks
soul.
so much. Thank you.
Well, folks, you have been here for our first new book showcase of the new year. What do I say? It is a harbinger of things to come, the most amazing harbinger of things to come. I can't predict. We just hold the space here, Kim, Don, and I. That's all we can do. We love doing it. And in that regard, I want to make sure to invite you next week. It's our first wild card open mic. It's going to be wild, that because you will bring the bewilderness to the reading. You all are the features and the stars, coming out next week on Sunday, same time. And looking ahead to our first reading of February, my friends, we will be out of January soon enough. It's our Poet's Focus with the word I, as in the pronoun, /I, as in eyesight. I, with our two featured poets, Linda V.E. Crawford, who's here with us today, and Indran Amirthanayagam, who I'm going to get to see, I think, with Ann Tweedy in Cambridge at the Grolier Bookshop this upcoming Wednesday. If you're in the vicinity, please do join us in Cambridge, Massachusetts to hear Indran. Linda and Indron will be with us. They'll be the guest featured poets, and you on the open mic on the theme of I, I, I spy. Whatever you bring. Folks, I am filled with possibly every emotion that my body could possibly be filled with from today's reading. Thank you again, Ansley, Thomas, Julene, and Lana. Thank you to all of you for staying just a little over today. And I so appreciate the energy that was in this room today. Incredible, incredible reading. Look forward, of course, to seeing you next week. And as I always say at the end of every program, please take exquisite care of yourself. There's a lot of stuff going around, my friends. Take extremely good care of your beloveds. I'm kind of doing that with my mom right now, who sends her best to everyone here in the new year. And my gosh, look what happens when you all write your miraculous poems. Keep at it, my friends. Keep at it. I'll see you next week. Take good care. Peace.